Welcome to the Coach Brew podcast. I am your fearless leader, Coach Brew, and I'm joined today by a very special guest, a member of my membership community, shameless plug for yesterday's underdog.com, Mr. Jon Rennie. Jon is a professional speaker, author, and leader extraordinaire, in my humble opinion. And I think anyone that has been in a leadership role on a nuclear sub during the Cold War is he's aces in my book and is an outstanding leader. And how do I know this? Because, well, speaking of my book, his book, I have the watch, just got done reading. And Jon, welcome to the show. How are you?
Great, Coach. Thanks for having me. It's great to be on here.
I have to tell you, Jon, I was impressed with the book, but I was super impressed with the foreword to the book.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's right. That's right. As people have been reading the book, the one thing that they say is how great the foreword is. And for those who don't know, Coach Brew actually wrote the foreword for the book, and it is phenomenal. And it's a great way to get the book going. And I really appreciate your help on the book.
I was kidding. I actually think people, when they do their Amazon review, they should review the foreword.
That I agree.
No, it's an amazing book. If you can get through the foreword, the rest of it's excellent. But I really love how you capture lessons from a submarine, and you take this. And it's obviously a very unique lens you view leadership through. It's a very unique environment to be leading in. But then you take that and you relate it, like you intermesh it seamlessly with the most common jobs that the average Joe, the average Jane reader has, in America or anywhere else for that matter. And there's a real art to that. Could you tell me just sort of the genesis of the project and how you kind of, give us a behind the scenes look at the wizardry behind doing that?
Well, I think I really realized, I've started to realize the last, maybe 5 years or so, that I had a really unique experience in my leadership journey because I was fortunate enough to have spent time in the Navy, but specifically on nuclear submarines towards the end of the Cold War. I came out of college and I served on the USS Tennessee for 5 years in various roles as an officer. But one of the things that's unique about a submarine is that there is no going home. You're with the crew every day, 3 months at a time. You are 100%, immersed in your leadership role. In fact, I would often come back from patrol and I would miss my first name because I'd never hear my first name. I was either Mr. Rennie or Lieutenant Rennie for 3 months at a time. And but that one thing you realize when you're that close to people all the time is that you realize that leadership is about people. It's about relationships. It's about understanding, the struggles that people are having and trying to work together towards achieving a common goal. And so that became a theme that I had throughout my leadership career. And after I get out after 5 years, and I worked for the global engineering company ABB in various roles. But at 32 years old, I took over my first manufacturing plant. And all that experience that I had from the Navy, that really helped me as I related to people and built relationships. And really, I had never been in manufacturing before. So I had done various like quality engineering, but as my first role as an engineering, as a production manager, as a manufacturing manager, plant manager, and I really had to pull on to all the skills I learned, experiences. And so I was fortunate to have had that background.
Yeah.
Because it really helped with building relationships and dealing with people.
So, the lens I view a book and a message and the author through is like, what's the ideal audience? And I don't know if you've heard this before from anyone who's read the book or knows your backstory and life on a nuclear sub. But I think, one of the ideal audiences for this book, everyone out there who's listening, are family businesses. because in a way, it's like being on a submarine. You're always at work, and you're always at work with the people you live with.
Mm-hmm.
And you take work home with you. You know, there's no, at the end of the day, saying, all right, I'm going to go to base housing. You know, I'm going to leave the office and go to base housing. You're not on a base. The sub is the base and the workplace. And, you know, in a family business, you're going home to a husband, a wife, you know, children, siblings, whoever it is that you work with all day. So I think that's a really key nuance to everything behind your message. You know, is and I never even thought of it the way of like I missed my first name. Like civilians don't think that. Like,
Yeah, that's a really good point. Is because in a family business, you're immersed, 24/7 in both your business and home life, and how do you deal with the relationships, the challenges, the issues, and there's a whole nother level of challenge in running a family business. I'm a co-founder and CEO of a manufacturing business now called Peak Demand, which I've run for about 4 years. And it's almost like a family business. It was a small group of people started the business, and we've built it up to be a much larger business. But we're with each other every day.
yeah.
We know everything about each other, so it's almost like a family business. And so I can tell you that these skills do really translate well to a small business.
And I think when it's done well, small business, any business is like a family business, and that you love the people you work with and you care about them as much as you care about your spouse and kids. Jon, let's backtrack for a minute. Yes. I Have the Watch is the title of the book. The subtitle is Becoming a Leader Worth Following. For those who aren't in the know and maybe never were leaders on a nuclear sub, what does I Have the Watch mean? Talk to the civilians listening real quick.
So it's really interesting. That is an expression we used in the military. When you said, I have the watch, it meant that you took over the watch from your, yes, it's not the watch like on your wrist. You actually are standing watch on a ship. So you are responsible for that particular area of the ship for that watch period. And during my time, our watch periods were 6 hours long. And so when you had the watch for 6 hours, you were responsible for that section of the ship for that whole 6 hours. Now, I was an officer, so I served as officer of the deck, which meant I was 100% responsible for the entire ship for 6 hours. That was my responsibility. And so when you had the watch, your other shipmates might be asleep, they might be in the bunk, they might be watching a movie, but you were to be awake and alert and responsible for everything that happened on that, and for the safety and the proper operation of that ship during the time at which that you stood the watch. And I think I parallel that well to leaders in leadership. When you have a leadership role, for example, you become a plant manager, you have the watch, you have the responsibility for that business. And the thing is, you're not just responsible for the numbers of that business and making the performance of that business meet the budgets and meet your key metrics. You're also responsible for the people that are in that business. And I think that's a distinction I make. When you have the watch in the Navy, you're responsible for the objectives of and the mission, but you're also responsible for all the people on board. And so that's the distinction I make. So when you have the watch, you have full responsibility.
So you're kind of like the Lieutenant Colonel Nathan Jessup of your organization. You want me. Remember the movie A Few Good Men?
Yeah.
You want me on that wall.
Right.
You need me on that wall.
Right. You serve a purpose. The leader serves a purpose to not only, attack the mission and get the goals done, but also to make sure that you're leading your troops properly to get there. So it's not just how you do, it's not just what you do, it's how you do it.
As I was reading the book, and I'm going to flip through the chapter headings right now and just share these for everyone. And you can pick up a copy of the book at IHaveTheWatch.com. For me, what I think is some of the magic of the book is it's a lot about the little things, Jon. And I think little things win big games. Little things make a big difference in companies. Things like showing you care, celebrating employees, doing something memorable, giving intangible gifts, communicating face-to-face, not with your thumbs on a smartphone, and the simple act of appreciation. So a lot of these are little things, and if someone's reading that, they might, if someone's hearing this, I should say, they might think, well, yeah, those are little things, but little things make a big difference. Can you give us an example or two of how those those little things, share a story of one of those little things making a huge difference, first on the sub and then in the workplace?
Yeah, I think so. If you can imagine, on a submarine at sea on patrol, it's a lonely life. It's quiet. You don't have any communication with the outside world. You're in your own element, and I think anything you can do to have a little bit of fun will be positive towards morale, and having a laugh really helps kind of break the ice, because you're spending long days with the same people for a long period of time, and everybody just wants to get home. And so those kind of things, when you can find ways to spark morale, it's a good thing. So an example of that, once we were doing what's called a tactical readiness exam down in off the coast of the Bahamas. We were actually doing live torpedo shoots, and so it meant we were.
That really makes me want a vacation in the Bahamas, John.
Yes.
The U.S. Navy does live torpedo shoots off the coast.
One of the things we do.
Awesome.
Yeah. But, we spent days up when none of us had any sleep for like 3 days, because we were being tested. We went through all sorts of testing that period. But at the end, the inspectors that came on our ship were leaving, and we had taken them topside. They put all their bags, and then we loaded them off on a tug. And then we all came back down, and we were talking about how tired we were and how some of these guys were jerks, and Bob, we were going through that. And then one of the guys looks at me and goes, yeah, well, I took care of them. I said, what'd you do? He said, well, when we surfaced, there's a bunch of dead flying fish on the backside of the submarine. And I packed them all in his bag on his way out. So it was one of these little things that we had a good laugh about it, and it built up the morale, and we had a good laugh. And it was just a great thing that somebody did. And it was a really good thing that built up our team, and it just got us through the next period of time until we got back to port. So it was just those little things that you can do that just kind of break the ice, make people laugh. So.
Yeah, practical jokes, and we kid because we care. Those are absolutely little things that make a huge difference.
Yes.
So what are some of the little things that you use to run peak demand? Little things that make a big difference, whether it's showing appreciation or, joking around with the guys in the shop, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think I talked about one thing that I talked about in the book a little bit is memorable gifts. If you're going to celebrate something and you're going to be giving something, one of the things I always say is look for, if you look at somebody, if you're a leader in a company and you walk around your office, you look at everybody's desk and you're going to see little mementos or little souvenirs or that mark important milestones or things in their careers. And so as I've been giving things out, I always think about something that could become a treasured memory, something that they would keep forever. For example, in my office, I have a picture of all the employees that were in my first plant, and they signed all the way around it. And to me, it's one of my most treasured possessions, because it just reminds me of my time that I served with them. In this case, after our first year, we had worked really hard to establish this business and started from scratch, essentially, and we built a factory. To celebrate our first year, I got small rocks made, and I actually had the founding 9 carved in them, and I had our logo. And each rock was different. And it just was something they keep on their desk, and it reminded of the foundations we built this business. So each rock was different, which represented each different skill set and experience they brought to the company, but also was something they can keep on their desk and remind them of that foundational work that we did in the first year. So
I love that, because it's it's on message, it's on brand, and it's very symbolic of what everyone actually experienced together.
Yeah, so if you're going to give a gift, don't just give a T-shirt or a mug. I mean, you think about a treasured token, something that would end up on their desk that they would remind them of a certain period of time. So I always try to find those things that'll become treasured tokens of that particular period of time.
John, I saw a great internet meme, and we all know those internet memes speak the truth to power sometimes, right? It was like an employee staff meeting with HR, and they're talking about how, why doesn't, I'm trying to remember exactly how it went. Why doesn't anyone use the suggestion box? And I'm trying to pull it up on my phone. So it's like, why doesn't anyone use the suggestion box? And the one person responded and said, giving management feedback would kind of be like talking to the mosquito about malaria. And, I think that so often, and I'm using this as a segue to one of your chapters, which I really love, so often people are afraid to give management feedback or leadership feedback because it's not safe to do it. People are walking on eggshells around their leaders sometimes, and they don't think that leadership or management has their back. It's something I talked about in the foreword of the book. Having military term is "I got your six," and most people feel like management's trying to cover their own backside, not looking out for their employees' back. Can you share a story? The story I'm talking about from the chapter about having your employees back.
Yeah, I wrote about that because I think it's important. In my career, before I became a plant manager, I was a design engineer, and we had gone to, we were developing a product, something that never had been done before. And I was responsible, I was a lead mechanical engineer. We went to the test lab, a high power test lab, and we were making a product so that it was designed so if there was an explosion inside this electrical apparatus, all the gases would go out the top, and it would keep everybody around the gear safe. So we were the first ones to develop this technology. Yes, exactly. And of course, the best laid plans, right? So I had done all the work, I'd done all the calculations. I thought everything would be fine. The first time we hit it with the fault voltage, the gear exploded violently. So instead of being safe,
that's reassuring.
It was unsafe. And I was a young engineer. I had to call my boss, who was back in the office. I had to tell him that we had spent thousands of dollars building the gear, getting the test lab, renting high-speed, cameras, all this sort of thing, and tell him that we failed. And I thought, well, my career is over. I'll be fired. I'll be looking for a job. But instead, what he said was, do you know what happened? And I said, yes. He said, can you fix it? I said, yes. He said, well, get back here and let's get it fixed and let's get back to the lab. And we ended up doing it. We redesigned the product, got back to the lab very quickly. We passed all our tests. We were the first to market with that particular technology, and we became the gold standard in the industry for safety in this particular type of equipment. So the point being is that, often leaders are quick to take a failure and they want to fire somebody or make an example, or because they're worried about how they look. And my boss at the time, I'm sure he took a lot of pressure for the failure at the test lab. So we spent money, we spent time, but you know what? At the end of the day, he realized we were doing something that had never been done before, and he recognized the importance of it. And he had my back. He said, get back to the lab. We did, and it turned out to be a huge success for the company financially. Publicity, there was a tremendous amount of rewards from getting that product done. And it was all because that one leader had my back versus just worried about his own back. So I think it's a great example of part of what leadership really is.
And I love that story because, a lot of times it's people have lost the ability to take the long view and understand, okay, this is an embarrassing, expensive setback in the moment, but what can we learn from it, and how can we become better because of it? That mindset's lost on a lot of people. They're more worried about what's the bottom line impact today. And this is a person that showed some understanding, some empathy, and wanted to work with you to find the solution. So what did that do in terms of cementing your loyalty and your allegiance to not the company, but to him especially?
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine, you got to go with your tail between your legs to your boss and say, I just wasted all this money and time and effort. And so when you think you're going to the gallows and it turns out you've got a leader that says, no, hey, I understand what you're trying to do. It's very difficult. Let's get back there and get it done. He becomes a legend in my mind, right? A favorite boss of mine, someone that you'll never forget because he gave you that second chance, right? And so those are.
How old were you at the time, John?
I was probably 28, maybe. So yeah.
So I'm going to venture to say that I have a feeling something in you changed that day.
Yeah, I think so. I think you realize, I always say you learn from great managers and from poor managers, right? Yep. You learn what to emulate and what to avoid. And with this particular manager, I learned that was a really powerful tool to have an employee's back when they fail, and I think that always stuck with me at that point.
How have you taken that forward and used that with your team now?
Yeah, I mean, it's in the toolbox now, So one of the things I really believe when it comes to people is that you have to give the gift of a challenge, right? If you have a good employee that is showing a lot of promise, put them in a role that's over their head, right? That it's going to be a challenging assignment to them. Give them something that is going to be difficult for them. There's a lot of reasons why you want to do that. One is you get to see what they're made of, right? Can they step up to a challenge that they've never had before? So that's one. The second thing is that you don't want a great employee to be bored or not challenged. So they see it as wow, what an opportunity, right? And the other thing is you're going to get them. They're going to make mistakes, right? And so they're going to learn a much more from taking on a challenging assignment and making mistakes than if they've never gotten an opportunity to do that. So as a 32-year-old manager in a global company, I was placed as a plant manager for the first time. That was a stretch assignment way outside of my comfort zone, and I learned so much from that challenge. And so,
yeah.
But I think if you're going to do that, you need to be able to back that employee up. You need to be able to say, look, I know this is going to be difficult. I've got your back. Let's do this. And you gotta give these give the gift of a challenge. I think it's really good for strong employees to be challenged.
That's tweetable, folks, right there. Give the gift of a challenge. And I think that's one of the challenges of leadership today is you don't want great employees to be bored ever, like you said, and to find a way to expand their role and ideally expand their salary to match it sometimes. If you're gonna.
Well, and you learn, right? I had a great employee. I thought he had a high potential. I gave him a project that was way outside his comfort zone, and he failed. And he wasn't up for the challenge. He was a good employee at what he was doing. He could not take it to the next level, and that's okay. So now I knew, right? It was an opportunity to learn what he could do, what he wanted to do. And I always believe if you can put their passions and what they love to do, and you can put them in the right role that helps the company, and if they're doing what they love and it helps the company, and you can get enough people lined up like that, I think you're going to be a lot more successful than you have people in roles that they don't like and they're miserable or they're uncomfortable or they're not happy. Then I think it's much more difficult to run a business that way.
Oh, absolutely. The right people in the right roles with the right goals, no doubt. John, so you've got kind of a who's who of some authors here who have endorsed the book. Mitch Bowling, This book should be included with any and all collections of leadership training. Mitch is the author, Leadership: A View from the Middle. What's the response, the early response been to the book? I know the formal launch is this Saturday in your hometown of Wake Forest, North Carolina. What's sort of the early? What are the early adopters saying?
Yeah, so the early readers, so far, you know, I mean, obviously there's going to be some critics at some point, but everyone has been very positive about the book. And I think everybody says, and I purposely wrote it, it's a short book, so it's easy to read, 114 pages. Everybody says it's a quick read. It's in 2 hours. I've digested the book, and it's filled with a lot of great tips and a lot of great ideas and ways that people are taking a lot of notes. They're highlighting. They're like, wow, that's a great idea. I'm gonna use this. So I've purposely made this short so it's easy to read. And second, a lot of practical tips from 30 years of leadership that you can, nuggets of wisdom that you can grab. You know, one of the things when I was writing this book, there's been 15,000 books written about leadership, right? So what could one person, one leader write about that could help others? And that's really what I thought about. And I thought, well, what are those experiences over the past 30 years that I could help, that could help new leaders or leaders that have been in a role for a long time, or maybe people transitioning from one job to another? What are some things that I can do to help them become a better leader? And I think you touched on it a little bit when you said it's the little extras, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, you can be an ordinary leader or you can be an extraordinary leader, and it's just that little extra that you put in that can really make you a much more more of a leader that people want to follow.
I have the watch, become a leader worth following. Exactly. I really enjoy books so there are two kinds of books I really enjoy as an author. One kind is the kind that, you know, I can read cover to cover on an airplane. You know, I can just take a book with me on a trip, read it cover to cover, you know, from start to finish by the time I land somewhere. And the other kind is that I can just pick up and put down. And this is the kind of book where you can just flip to any chapter, pick it up, read the 3 to 5 pages that chapter may be, put it down, and then later in the day or the next morning, if you're like me and you like to read a little bit every morning, just pick up another chapter, flip to another chapter and read that. It's a really easy read. And the nice thing about the lessons in the chapters is that it's something you can go apply immediately. So if you read it first thing in the morning, there's a strategy you can use. Think about how you're going to use it on your morning commute, that you can go actually use it in your workplace that day. And in my mind, that's the mark of a really, really great book. You know, there are thousands upon thousands of leadership books written. Some are very like pie in the sky, all theory, a lot of fluff. This is not that. This is nuts and bolts, meat and potatoes kind of stuff you can use right away. Jon, talk to us a little bit about just how, you know, you incorporate that whole concept of having the watch sort of within the fabric of your company at Peak Demand, and then also, you know, I'm going to take this out of the workplace. You know, how does the concept of having the watch relate to your family?
Sure. Yeah. So I think you know, I talk about in the book that leadership is pretty straightforward, right? It's about motivating a group of people towards a goal, right? And we forget about that. We forget that it's about motivating. We forget that it's about people, and we forget that it's about a goal, right? So some people just come in every day and they do their emails, right? You know, email 0 is my goal for the day, right? But what you have 20 people that work for you. What are you doing to talk to them? So when it comes to Peak Demand, the company I co-founded, we particularly, one of the things we do is we stress our mission daily. So we have a daily production meeting at 8:30, and we discuss everything that's going to happen that day and why. But the thing is, we talk about what our mission is, and that is we always say we're a different kind of supplier, right? And so I remind employees of, well, they say, well, should we ship this today or tomorrow? And I said, guys, we are a different kind of supplier. We ship it today, not tomorrow. What would our competition do? Well, they would wait till tomorrow, and we're going to do it today. So it's a chance to remind everybody about what our vision is and why we are operating the way we are. So I think, so it's the daily interaction with employees. It's the reminder of the mission, and it is the constant, you know, touch point of why we're here as a company. So reminding everybody what our goals are, what we're trying to achieve. The other side of it, I would say, is that if you ever looked at my work boots, you'd understand where I spend my time. So I do,
Yeah.
like every leader, I have to spend time paying bills and doing marketing and sales, and I travel visiting customers. But when I'm in the factory, I'll always put my boots on and I'll spend time out there. Sometimes I'll just run a machine. I'll just walk up, because I know how to run everything in our plant, and I'll just do that. I'll just work with the guys and spend time with them. And it's about them seeing me, and for me not to get myself in a bubble of just my office and my emails and my phone calls. You got to get outside your office. You got to spend time with your people. And it's the same thing with a family, right? You know, when you go out to dinner, is everybody on their phones, or are you talking? Are you present, right? And we, you know, we need to be more present as parents, more present as bosses. We need to get out of our offices, and we need to spend time with our employees and our families. I think it ties in really well.
So you mean to tell me you can't be updating your Facebook status when you have the watch?
No, there's no phones. Well, there was no phones on a submarine anyway, but no, you had to be focused on the mission and standing a good watch. Yeah, because you were responsible for the people. So that's why.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jon, what's the biggest lesson you learned, you know, as a leader? You know, maybe you know, a struggle that you had, that, you know, something you kind of had to turn around, and it's just sort of changed the way you have the watch.
Yeah. Okay. So I would say, you know, as a young leader, you know, when you're young, you're aggressive. You think you know all the answers.
Yep.
You charge into areas you don't know with what you think are the answers. And I think what I've learned is, I don't know all the answers, and I need to. The one thing has evolved through my leadership is I really, really do believe in people. That I think the best ideas come from a group of people having a chance to look at something and flesh out some different ideas about it. So my best ideas may not be the best idea, and so that's been a big part of it. I also learned that sometimes the best idea comes from the quietest person in the room. And so whenever I'm brainstorming and I have a group of employees, I always look for the person who's doing a lot of listening and not a lot of talking. And that person usually has thought through the problem and has a good idea. So I guess I would say I'm much more collaborative than I was in my early days. I thought I had all the answers. And I think that the older I get, the more I realize that I need a good team around me. And I really need to have a diverse team around me.
Yeah.
People from all sorts of different walks of life and background, because that's where you get the best ideas.
And the sooner you can figure that out, the better served you will be by everything he just shared with you. You know, I think when, you know, I remember myself as a young coach, young, hard charging, I'd come into a situation, you know, whether it's on campus, you know, with my team, whatever it was. And I think I had all the answers. I think I had it all figured out. Hell, I probably didn't even know the question, you know, and the ability to just sit back and listen. Who's the quiet person in the room, and why are they quiet? Sometimes it's because they're thinking. Sometimes it's because they've been so beaten down by leadership, kind of steamrolling them in the past so much. It's almost like they have Stockholm syndrome, you know? And you know, the example I like to give is, you know, I had a client who just took a new head coaching job, and he's like, what recommendations do you have for me? You know, my first day on campus is next Monday. I'm like, just go there assuming you are the dumbest human being on the entire campus. Like, you don't know anything. And just sit back and listen and learn. And I think that advice can serve anyone, anywhere well. Just assume that someone else has a better idea and be willing to listen and
absolutely,
and then be willing to implement it, you know.
I mean, You raise a good issue. One thing I like to tell new leaders or new managers when they're taking on a role or they're transitioning to a new leadership role, one thing I always do is I have one-on-one meetings with as many people as I can. And it's really great. And some of the questions I ask are, what's going well here?
Mm-hmm.
What needs to change? And then I say, if you were me and you were coming in this role, what would be the one thing you would do right away? And what's remarkable about doing that is sometimes I'll come into an organization, I'll talk to 100 people, have that same conversation. And when I pull the notes together, it's the top 3 things I need to get done. It's all there. The people, well, I'm like a consultant, right? That's what consultants do sometimes. They'll come in, they'll ask a bunch of questions, they'll get all their notes, and they're like, oh, okay, here's the 3 things we need to do. Well, I essentially do it as a new leader when I come into a new organization. You end up having all the answers, not all the answers, but you have the consensus, what people have been feeling, and they finally have a chance to express it. And then when you do those 3 things, you wouldn't imagine the feelings that people have, like, oh my gosh,
holy shit, he actually listens to us.
He listened to me. He took action. Yeah. That's crazy. And suddenly you have instant respect for you as a new leader coming in, that you listened, and B, you took action. And they're not used to that. That's not.
No, that's
today. So
yeah, that's the old. I think that there's so much great wisdom in Facebook and Instagram memes, John. It's the old image of the employee suggestion box on the wall, and it's actually bottomless, and right underneath it there's a paper shredder plugged in.
Yeah.
Like the people just feel like, why would I bother suggesting anything? Either they don't listen, or if they listen, they're humoring me and they don't actually implement anything. So the ability to sit down one-on-one with people, listen, but then actually go implement, what they suggest is huge. And, if you're looking to change the amount of buy-in that you have with your employees, go do what John just said and watch your results just soar.
It's amazing how it works. The amount of knowledge that you have in your organization already, without any outside forces, you have so much power inside the organization. It's remarkable. And if you can tap into that, you have almost everything you need to be able to lead effectively and beat your competition in the market. So I think it's some powerful things, getting out of your office and spending time talking to employees. So I think I really highly encourage it. One thing I want to add too, one of the genesis of writing the books is that, if you look at the Gallup study year after year about employee engagement, that's the thing that's really got me focused on trying to make a difference in leadership. And it's year after year, 70% of U.S. employees are disengaged at work. You mentioned that you put something in the suggestion box, nobody listens, so why should I care? Yeah. And so 70% are disengaged at work. And another study showed that about half of U.S. employees are looking for a new job every day.
Oh, they've got one eye open and one foot out the door.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So do you think that they're giving you 100% if half your employees are looking for a job? So I think the point is that you have dissatisfied employees, disengaged employees. You have employees that are looking for another job. What if you tapped into that potential that you have within your own 4 walls? And it's powerful if you do. The problem is that most leaders have never had any leadership training. So if you actually look at like an MBA program, for example, I actually did a speech at University of South Carolina, their international MBA program. And I did a lecture on leadership. And afterwards, everybody came up to me. They really liked the speech. They wanted to learn more. And I asked them, I said, so how many other speeches have you heard on leadership from someone like me that's been in the trenches? And they said, you're the first one.
Yeah.
I said, well, how many courses in accounting have you had? And they said, well, we were required in our MBA program to take two full courses in accounting. And so if you think about that, so we learn more about accounting in an MBA program than we do about leadership.
An MBA, if you get your MBA, you're going to be a leader.
Right.
And you can outsource that accounting on Upwork to someone in the Philippines for $5 an hour.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so how do you think of an employee? Well, an employee, right? An employee is an expense. And so you think of them as, oh, that's an expense.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where this is on the P&L statement. If I reduce employees, I can reduce employee expense, I can make more profit. That's the mindset you have coming out of school. Whereas you don't realize that your employee is actually an asset. I mean, companies say that, but they don't actually do it. Imagine if you use an employee like an asset to really come up with ideas and ways to improve the business.
It's so often, it's a lot of lip service. And the scariest thing to me, John, I love that you mentioned the Gallup survey. The scariest thing to me about that Gallup survey isn't the fact that 70% of the workforce are actively disengaged and voluntarily are reporting in a survey, yeah, I'm actively disengaged.
Yes.
It's the fact that that survey has taken place every year for, I think it's been 26 years.
Yes.
And it's been talked about on podcasts like this, articles in Harvard Business Review. It's been talked about everywhere by everyone. It's talked about inside the walls of organizations by HR, the Human Resistance Department, as I so often see it. But nothing is freaking done about it. That number isn't improving. So you have this cancer growing within the walls of your organization. And it's getting, it's not getting smaller. In many cases, it's getting bigger. Or, it's choosing to leave and go to another company, and you're doing nothing about it in so many cases.
Yeah.
And that's the really scary part for me. As we're wrapping up here, what do you do actively to cultivate, a greater sense of engagement with your people? I know you got your boots on, you walk the line, so to speak, you get your hands dirty and work with them. What else are you doing to make sure that your people aren't filling out that Gallup survey saying, yep, 7 out of 10 of us?
So I say it in the book, and I'll say it here. Leadership's a people business. You've got to get to know your people. And I know my employees. I know their names. I know their birthdays. I know their kids' names, right? I know if they're a morning person or not. I have one employee, he's not a morning person. I say good morning, miserable every morning. So I give him that space until he wakes up and has his first cup of coffee. I know my people, and my people know me. I'm genuine in work. If things are going bad, I say things are going bad. Things are going good, I'm saying things are going good. I'm genuine, and they're genuine with me, and they see that it's not lip service. It's actually real, genuine. I say this a lot. If you don't like people and you don't like dealing with people, please do not become a leader. Leadership is a people business. And if you don't like dealing with people and all their challenges, their problems, their hardships, their quirks, their hang-ups, their phobias, then don't be a leader. This is it's not an easy job. And you've got to do it because you love people and you love you have a passion for your organization. If you don't, please do us all a favor and don't become a leader.
How's business? Oh, it'd be great if it weren't for all the employees and damn customers.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, those people do need to do us a favor and not have the watch.
Yes, absolutely.
John, where can people, where's the best place to send people who are in your neck of the woods to pick up the book maybe this Saturday?
Yeah, this Saturday is the book launch. And
subtle hint there. You see what I did there?
Yes, I appreciate that. It's at page 158 Books in downtown Wake Forest. It's at 2 p.m. this Saturday. We have a book launch. The book, if you go to ihavethewatch.com, you can, there's links to get autographed copies. You can also buy it on Amazon, and you can actually buy it off page 158's book or on their website as well, which supports the local bookstore. So that's a good thing as well. So all that is
absolutely
at ihavethewatch.com. You can all go, my website's jonsrennie.com. That's also available. But,
and let's, a little nuance here. If you're ever on Jeopardy and you're listening to this and you're ever on Jeopardy, you should know that Wake Forest, the town of Wake Forest, is not where the university is.
Yes.
Fun fact about North Carolina.
Yes.
The university is in where, John?
It's in Winston-Salem.
Winston-Salem. What is in Wake Forest, North Carolina?
It's a Southeast seminary where Wake Forest University used to be. So
okay.
They sell T-shirts in Wake Forest. It says where the college used to be. So.
That's awesome.
That's where we
So you're not too far from like Raleigh, Durham, the Research Triangle, that area, right?
You're right. We're
Yep.
in the outskirts of Raleigh. Absolutely.
Awesome. So if you're in the greater Raleigh, Durham area, head on over Saturday to Jon Rennie's book launch, which is where again, John?
It's going to be at page 158 Books in downtown Wake Forest, and that's on the 20th at 2 p.m.
Perfect. And if you're not in the greater North Kakalaka area, you should head over to ihavethewatch.com, pick up a signed copy from John on his website, and then go give it a review, people. John, thanks for coming on the podcast. And it's always a pleasure talking to you and learning from you, man.
All right. Thanks, Coach. And thanks. You got to get the book, at least just to read the foreword by Coach Brew. It's phenomenal. So
I hear that ain't too shabby.
it's not bad.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
Take care. Thank you.